So anyway, I just went down my list and I just clicked off whoever I thought might have some money. And I sent them an email saying, "Hey, look, this is what I'm doing. I already have a 3 unit that I self-manage, and now we're going to do this property in Pennsylvania." And I maybe got 30 people onto that webinar, and I felt really good about that. And 3 people invested for a grand total of 150,000. And I was ecstatic. I mean, I didn't think I could raise 150 cents, right? I mean, it was 150,000.
Hey, welcome listeners. Today I have the distinct honor and privilege of having Tim Lyons on the show today. He's got a really amazing background and story. I think you're going to find a lot of inspiration from it and motivation. He is the principal and managing partner of Cityside Capital out of New York, I think Queens, if I'm right. Tim, welcome to the show today.
Paul, thank you very much for the opportunity to be here with you and your audience, and I look forward to today's talk.
Yeah, absolutely. Welcome today. So, Tim, you've got quite the interesting background. I think you were trained up as a firefighter in New York City, currently a firefighter as well.
Yeah, so I've actually graduated 1 level, Paul. I've been promoted to the rank of lieutenant about 7 years ago.
Okay.
So I've been doing this for 18 years, and it's been the ride of a lifetime. In between firefighting and real estate, I was also a registered nurse in a level 1 trauma center for about 8 or so years. Gave that up to get into the real estate game, and that's where I am today.
Wow. So do you also like jumping out of airplanes and other like risky, high adrenaline,
You know,
engaging sports?
I got married kind of young, so my wife wasn't really fond of like those types of activities, so I've kind of stayed away. But believe me, I mean, I've always worked in some of the busier firehouses in New York City, so tons of adrenaline, tons of really crazy experiences. So I've gotten my fill.
Enough for a lifetime, I can only imagine. Well,
Sorry.
that's really cool, man. Well, that's exciting. Well, talk to us a little bit about the journey, how you got in real estate, what sparked your interest, and then, what you've been doing with it.
Yeah, I mean, great question. I mean, listen, New York City firefighter was like on my bucket list since I've been like a little kid, right? Always obsessed with fire trucks. I had a police scanner from Santa Claus that I got when I was like 9 years old. I attached it to my bike, used to ride all around town following the fire engines, but then I also had other plans, right? I went to college with the intention of being pre-med. That lasted for about 15 minutes because I joined a fraternity. And so I had a interest in medicine, I'll say. So when I got to the firehouse, a lot of guys had second jobs, and I didn't realize that. A lot of guys had like businesses. Like one guy owned several bagel shops and tanning salons. One guy owned a deli. Tons of contractors, right? All sorts of HVAC, roofers, general contracting. Some of them were PAs. Some were nurse practitioners. Some were nurses, and I saw these guys and I'm like, I was 22 years old. I was ready to rock and roll. So I worked for a few years doing odd jobs. I worked for a risk management group and doing some actually N95, sales and testing for our big hospital systems prior to, COVID and stuff. And, when I got talked back into going to nursing school, so that's what I did. I got my associates in nursing, and then started working as a nurse. And I always had steady work, and I kind of came from kind of a little bit of a scarcity mindset when it comes to money. Divorced household, very young. Debt was considered a 4-letter word, and I got in trouble for using 4-letter words back in the day. Really I was kind of taught like that old school millionaire next door mindset, save your money, go to school, get good grades, get a good job, pension. Oh my God, if you get a pension, that's like tremendous, right? And I'm not downplaying pensions. I'm very happy that I'm going to be able to have one day. But that was it, right? And then all of a sudden I started working 80, 90, 100 hours a week with overtime and 12-hour shifts in the hospital, 24-hour shifts in the firehouse. And I had 3 little girls.
Mm.
And when they couldn't talk and they were little, no one really said anything. No one knew if I was there or not there, not there. But then all of a sudden, they got to be bigger, and a lot of tears, right? A lot of, you're never home, and I haven't seen you in a couple of days, and when's the next time I'm going to see you? And it started to wear on my wife, started to wear on me, and so I went down the rabbit hole, reading books, podcasts, YouTube videos, right? Talking to other people. And, I really kind of came up with two things, Paul. I couldn't save my way to wealth, or at least what I wanted or what I viewed as wealth. And I really needed equity, and equity was going to come from one of two places. And that was going to be owning a business or real estate. And at the time, owning a business didn't sound that attractive to me, right? To take on a third job, but real estate was attractive to me, and that's what I did. I just started to get super educated. I like to say that on my hour and a half commute to the firehouse, depending on traffic, I enlisted myself in the university on wheels, and just got to work, business books, taxes, real estate, entrepreneurship, psychology, sales, marketing. I mean, you name it, I was going down every rabbit hole possible. So I became a real estate investor, and by way of becoming a real estate investor, I ended up starting my own business with Cityside Capital to basically help people like myself get involved.
Wow. Okay. A lot to unpack there. That's really cool though. So you're obviously hardworking, ambitious guy with lots of dreams and goals and passions, and then your life kind of got turned upside down with the three little girls. I have a daughter, so I understand what that's like. And when you have kids, you're blessed to have them. You want to spend some time with them, right? Not just kind
No
of
doubt.
pay for their development and then you'll see them. My daughter's in college now, don't get to see her very much, so you got to take the time when you can, right? So I completely understand that desire. And so you're like, all right, well, how can I continue to grow my income lifestyle and really create this thing called wealth? Ultimately, you said something, you determined you couldn't save your way to wealth and you needed equity. So what is this? What do you mean you couldn't save your way to wealth? I mean, we're taught all the time, put money in a 401k and then we're going to retire. Every other commercial on Sunday when we watch golf is your retirement people.
Yeah, I mean, look, I mean, you do a simple search on, whatever search engine you use, and personal finance, or, how to become wealthy or something. Like the first book that's going to come up is like Think and Grow Rich, right? And then it's going to be, Dave Ramsey, Susie Orsman, several folks like that. And there's nothing wrong with those folks. I mean, I think they serve their purpose for, large swaths of our population, but that's not what I was looking for. Um, I was trying to max out my 457 plan with the firehouse. I had a 403B with the hospital. Went on 2 vacations a year. All my bills were paid. Had a savings account, right? Because I came from scarcities. I always wanted to have a cushion in my savings account, right? But I didn't understand inflation. I didn't understand how to use debt and leverage. I didn't understand that was even available to me. To me, investing in real estate or starting a business was something that rich people did. The wealthy folks, and it was an impenetrable, society. That was my limiting belief as a 20 something. And as I got to be into my 30s, married, couple of kids, and then putting in some of the hard yards, I said, man, like I gotta find some time. Like time was my currency. My time was what I was willing to do anything to buy back. And through this education process and surrounding myself with folks that were doing the thing that I wanted to do ultimately was how I started, my journey towards, being a successful entrepreneur.
No, that's awesome. So you turned your commute into, so you took the time that you had basically, you didn't make excuses and you're like, all right, I'm going to educate myself and figure out how I'm going to do this. So that was a period of time, but then at some point you had to get off the starting blocks, right? And take some action. What did that look like? Because I find a lot of people, whether it's real estate investing, business ownership, or whatever, there's a lot of dreamers out there and they dream 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 ad nauseum, but they never take any action. And so they don't get anywhere. What was that first kind of major step for you in the direction of
I'm
investing?
so happy you asked that because I still have a hard time that I paid a mentor to mentor me in commercial real estate. But essentially, I got started in real estate by buying a 3-family property with a friend of mine. I was too scared to do it by myself.
Okay.
I'm not really that handy, right? I can't even hang a picture in my own home
Like me.
because it'll literally fall down in a few hours. And so I was scared about the being a landlord, but I wanted that education. I wanted to be in the trenches. I wanted to find out. I also, I had read all the books, about real estate. Investing out of state to me sounded crazy. As a New Yorker, you're guilty till proven innocent. I don't trust anybody. And I want to be able to, drive past it, mow the lawn, shovel the snow. I want to do and I want to have, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, I was going through the growing pains. So I did that. I ended up doubling my money in 2 years, rode the COVID wave up and sold that. But right after I bought that first property, that first 3-family, I started hearing a lot of people talk about commercial real estate. And commercial real estate, and from the first glance, seemed very complicated. It seemed like what private equity folks do down on Wall Street. You got to wear a suit and tie. You got to go to Madison Avenue, right, and into a white shoe firm, right, and because it's net operating income, it's cap rates, it's yield on cost, and debt service coverage ratios and spreadsheets, and oh my god, like I was already lost, right? So I kept on hearing in podcast, Paul, about talking about mentors, and either you got to go work for them for free for a year and add value to them, or you can pay somebody. And I was like, man, I would never pay anybody till I tell me how to do something, right? That sounds crazy. I used to hear people on podcasts talking about, spending $100K a year on coaches and mindset coaches and business coaches. And
Wait. You went to college though. You
I went
paid
to
somebody to
college,
teach
dude,
you how
right?
to do
That's what I'm
something.
saying. I followed the plan, right? I got good
Yeah.
grades. I went to college. I'm saving my 457, maxing it out, and it's not happening, right? So, but at the end of the day, like I started to see the light. I started to see that, especially in real estate, when it comes to business, a lot of people are very willing to help you out. If they're higher up on the rung on the ladder than you are, people are very willing to put their hand back down and kind of pull you up, right? Because somebody undoubtedly did it for them while they were on their journey, right? So anyway, I did a lot of due diligence on some folks out there, and I ended up finding these 2 guys who were actually originally from New York, which made me feel really good, Paul, right? Because I knew they probably had, similar values to mine and everything else. And
Guilty until proven innocent.
guilty till proven innocent, Paul. That's it.
Yeah.
But anyway, 2 great guys, and they were in the commercial real estate game, and I paid them. I paid them $25,000. That was the tuition cost. I call it tuition, and my wife thought I was crazy, but she supported me. She knows that when I put my head down, and if I'm committed, not just interested, but I'm committed to doing something, that I'm going to make it happen. And she knows how cheap I am too, Paul. So she knew that if I was serious by parting ways with 25K, then I was going to make it happen. That's what I did, and that was March 1st of 2020. And as you know, about 3 weeks later, it was hashtag flatten the curve, right? We were gonna flatten this COVID curve,
2
and be
weeks,
home for
right?
2 weeks.
Yep.
And so I was like, oh my God, what did I do? Right? I just spent 25K on these 2 mentors, right? Do I ask for a refund? Do I not? I mean, like, because I was going to work while my girls were in school, 9 to 3:30. And now they were getting homeschooled. And I was like, oh my God, trying to get everybody onto Zoom. It was terrible. But in the background, Paul, I was a New York City firefighter in a neighborhood in Queens called Corona. And Corona, Queens, which is right next to East Elmhurst, is or was considered the epicenter of the COVID outbreak in New York City. And outside of Elmhurst General Hospital, there was multiple refrigerated trucks with dead bodies in them. And it's a pretty busy firehouse with fire duty and other stuff. And for about 4 months, we didn't do anything else but CPR. We did CPR on people 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. As soon as you hit the computer and you told the dispatcher you were available for another call, it would come right up for CPR. So we didn't know what was going on. Everybody was nervous. Stock market went down by a third. And I had a brand new baby at home. So I ended up moving out of my house, and I moved into my mother-in-law's house, and she moved into my home to help my wife out with my kids. And for 9 weeks, I didn't see them. And I put my head down. I woke up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I went to bed around 11 midnight, and I just crushed through material. And by like the third or fourth week, I'm calling up bankers in the markets that I want to start investing in, and I'm calling up brokers. And it was funny. I called this one community banker in the Carolinas, and I'm like, "Hey, my name's Tim Lyons. Whatever." I tell him my little spiel, and he's like, "I'm sorry." He's like, "I don't, do I know you? Have we worked together before?" And you're talking about commercial real estate with COVID. Like no one's really doing anything right now, and I'm trying to process PPP loans. Like I'm up to my eyeballs,
Mm.
And I got some reps in. I got some reps in taking that action, right? Getting uncomfortable, being comfortable, being uncomfortable. Making phone calls, sending out the emails, going through pro formas, really leaning heavily on my coaches to really guide me through because they had a couple of thousand units of multifamily between them, and they were trying to do the same thing, right? They're trying to figure out, how do you show apartments when you can't, be within 6 feet of another human being? How do you collect rent? How do you enforce the rules? How do you provide value? And all this stuff. So I had like a crash course in asset management, in market dynamics, the debt cycle, like all in a very short amount of time. I'll pause there in case you have a question about that, but I can keep going.
No, keep going. It's really fascinating.
So so now we come through, the summer of 2020, and I'm getting this education. I'm now back in my home, thank God, because we had some clarity about what COVID was and what it wasn't. And my coach gives me the opportunity of a lifetime to join him on what's called a multifamily syndication, which is a fancy term for investors aggregating their capital to buy a larger property than they would be able to afford, usually by themselves, or that they want to have some risk in the real estate market without having the entire risk on just themselves or in a joint venture. So we go through this 43 unit. We're going to buy it in York, Pennsylvania, because he was actually in the process of moving his family to that area. York, Pennsylvania really doesn't show up on a lot of people's top 10 lists when investing in real estate. But anyway, good deal. And he takes me through the whole process, acquisition, due diligence, getting the financing, in place. And towards the end of the project, he said, "Tim, do you want to give capital raising a try?" And I'm like, "Well, Chris," I'm like, please don't count on me for, capital. I mean, I got a Yahoo, email address, and I think I have a couple of wealthy relatives. I mean, I don't know. So anyway, I just went down my list and I just clicked off whoever I thought might have some money. And I sent them an email saying, "Hey, look, this is what I'm doing. I already have a 3 unit that I self-manage, and now we're going to do this property in Pennsylvania." And I maybe got 30 people onto that webinar, and I felt really good about that. And 3 people invested for a grand total of 150,000. And I was ecstatic. I mean, I didn't think I could raise 150 cents, right? I mean, raised 150,000. So my brother and I, who's my partner, and my older brother Greg, he's 4 years older than me, lives in Charlottesville, Virginia. We both invested in this first deal, and we had a ton of people tell us, like, listen, this is your first deal. I love what you're doing, but maybe we're going to sit this one out, and maybe we'll catch you on the second or the third one. Let us know how it's going. And that's all the fuel I needed to get off into the races, right? I mean, like, this was viable. This was going to work. So that's how I bought my first, multifamily property, August of 2020, in the throes of COVID. And 2 weeks later, introduced to one of their colleagues, and for another deal, 148 units. This time was in Greenville, South Carolina. And I'm like, cool, let's road trip, let's go check it out. So we go through the same process, and now I'm raising 560,000. And I said, man, I raised 150 and then 560,000. I mean, but take yourself back to that point. This is towards the end of 2020. The stock market was vacillating between the lows and
Hmm.
super highs. Like, it was a crazy time, right?
Yeah.
The volatility was crazy, the unknown, the uncertainty. But you know what? People had some certainty around what I was doing because I like to say you need food, clothing, and a place to live, right?
Hmm.
So multifamily made sense to a lot of people, and people, I think, by and large, know they need or they should have some kind of allocation towards real estate. But nobody wants that proverbial 2 a.m. phone call for the clogged
The
toilet that
toilet.
everybody hears so much about, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I started my business. And, Greg and I, he got furloughed from his job. And, I obviously have the time to do this. I wasn't working as a nurse anymore. And we started this business, but we realized that there was a greater need for transparency, for due diligence. If people have capital and but they don't have the time, the knowledge, the energy to kind of go down the rabbit hole that I just did with
Hmm.
mentorship and months of preparation and studying, if they just have capital they want to put to work, how do they know who to call? How do you know who to trust? How do you know what asset classes are even out there and what the benefits or the pros and cons are, right? So we saw a void in the market, and I don't know who said it, but you get paid in proportion to the level of the problems that you solve, right? And that was our thesis: was people would like to have say a done for you type of due diligence that we can put in front of them and say, look, here's the deal, here's what we're working on, this is what we've kind of done the underwriting on, and do you want to join us?
Mm. No, that's really fascinating. That's a really just very interesting story. I mean, there's so much in that. This whole idea that from this idea you're led to real estate, you dove into self-education. At some point you made a decision you needed a coach or a mentor, which, as an aside, I'm going to say that's the problem with our education system right now, is that there's a whole lot of book learning. But back in the old days, you would be mentored by somebody. You get a lot of on the job training. There's study, and then there was work, and there's study, and there's work, and things like that. And you learn a lot more. You don't learn until you do. But so you got this mentor, these two mentors. Horrible timing. But the reality is, time goes on, right? We look back. I'm going to wait a year. I'm going to wait 5 years, and then turn around and 5 years have passed, and the timing is still not right because something else is going on in the world or your life or whatever. So you did it. You didn't back off. You didn't get a refund. But then they challenged you, and also so they challenged you to help you get off the starting blocks. It sounds like, and so everyone kind of needs that, and that built your confidence, and now you've really taken off. So very very exciting story, and kind of neat just to see the architecture of how that developed for you. Um, so, what you do now, in addition to your own investing, is this due diligence process for new projects and so forth. And you make that available with Cityside to, like, if I wanted to invest money, I said, hey, Tim, I got 100 grand or 50 grand or 200 grand or some number. And I want to diversify, put some in real estate. Maybe I got some over here in gold and here in stocks and whatever,
Hmm.
but I don't, like you said, I don't want to plunge toilets. You're the guy, and you can say, well, we vetted these projects or whatnot, and you can educate me so I feel comfortable with where my money's going and all that.
So I'll take it a step further, Paul. We actually went ahead and got our securities licenses, our Series 82 and our Series 63, and we work with a broker dealer that is solely focused on commercial real estate offerings. So
Hmm.
people, when they hear broker dealer, sometimes they're like, "Man, what is that?" Right? Fidelity, Vanguard, Goldman Sachs,
Yeah.
J.P. Morgan, all in some capacity are broker dealers, right? They buy and sell securities, but they're more stocks, bonds, ETFs, and the like. Whereas the broker dealer that we work with is solely focused on multifamily, self storage assets and industrial assets across the United States. So, when we saw the option that real estate's a team sport, we understood that now, right? At the New Yorker, you can take the kid out of New York, but you can't take the New York out of the kid, right? It was a team sport, number one. And number two, you have to invest. You can live wherever you want, but you have to invest where the numbers make sense. And
Yeah.
by and large, those are, states that have business friendly environments, that
Hmm.
have landlord friendly rules and regulations, that are desirable to for the everyday person to live and work and play and raise a family. So what we found was, Phoenix, Arizona, Texas, Florida, Georgia, the Carolinas, Tennessee, and then we have a pocket in the Midwest in Ohio, Michigan, and Indiana. So that's where our portfolio now lies. So what we did was we joined this broker dealer, and this broker dealer actually is very intent, I should say, on providing due diligence. So we have 9 operators that we work with across the U.S. 7 multifamily, 1 self-storage provider, and 1 industrial provider. And they've gone through a rigorous, background check and underwriting and due diligence process, not only from my broker dealer, but from a third party as well that we pay to do a lot of the background checks and whatnot. So, because look, at the end of the day, there's all sorts of memories of Bernie Madoff, of, Ponzi schemes, right? How do you know who to trust? And, all this stuff. We kind of want to take that uncertainty and fear out of the equation and say, look, we're more than willing to show you, that we vetted these folks. So then, the process the way the process works is that when one of these groups gets a property, or if they start a fund, we also work on their funds. But if they get a single asset under contract, say a 300-unit multifamily in Dallas, they'll give us, certain things such as like the trailing 12 months of the profit and loss statements, the collections report, the current rent roll, right? And that'll show what the current rent is, what the market rent is, what the delta is, which is called the loss to lease. And then they give us their underwriting model, their actual model, right? So then our in-house underwriting team, a guy, Terry, that we have on our staff, he who is an underwriter for a single family office out of New York City, for their multifamily portfolio. He'll do a whole report on, if things don't add up or there's, uncertainty in their underwriting, there's a lot of back and forth to get the answers. And then if that is approved, my broker dealer will actually hop on a plane and he'll go visit the property and do a site visit, take pictures and take notes and meet the property management company and shake hands with some of the current residents and, and then come back. So then we'll have a capital meeting, and there's 19 reps or soon to be 20 reps on our platform. In the last 2 years, we've raised over $250 million. And say, hey, listen, this is the project that we have. Do you guys want to do this one? And if so, what kind of allocation do you think you might like? And in the background, Greg and I are talking to investors saying, hey, this is what we do. If we do have something in Dallas or Texas or in the Sun Belt or the Southeast or whatever, would this be something that you would like to be a part of? And we're qualifying them, because we need to know if they're accredited versus not accredited. Are they suitable for this type of investment? So that's pretty much our business model. And I'd love to throw it back to you.
Wow. Okay. So you guys have come a long way in a few short years. I'll tell you that. Sounds like you've really done some amazing things. Well, we're kind of wrapped up on time here, Tim, but how do people get in contact with you? I know you have a podcast, you've got a book and a website and a phone number. Tell everyone about all those things and ways they can reach out to you if they've got interest in investing.
So I wrote a chapter in a book during COVID. It's called Bringing Value, Solving Problems, and Leaving a Legacy. And I have 1 billion copies in my basement, and my wife wants them out in the worst way. So if you want a free copy of that book, I'd be happy to send it to you. Just send me an email to tim@citysidecap.com. We have a free download right on our webpage if you want to check that out, kind of detailing the process of what it's like to work with us. And then we have a podcast, me and my brother Greg. It's called the Passive Income Brothers Podcast. It's released every Wednesday. And finally, you can just call my cell or text me. It's 516-521-7762. And I'd be happy to chat with you.
Wow, Tim, we'll get all that in the show notes too. Wow, that's great. What an amazing story. What an amazing ride you've had. And it sounds like to me you guys are just getting started.
Just getting started, Paul. And I'm having a great time doing it. So.
Yeah. Well, thanks for being on the show today, man. You had a tremendous value.
Thank you so much.